Greetings. Welcome to So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles, and it's always a pleasure to share facts and viewpoints on the world of sports, entertainment, and society. Happy New Year to all of you out there, hoping and wishing that you and your families have a prosperous 2023. Before I introduce this luminous guest I have the honor of speaking with, make sure to check out past episodes of So Much to Talk About on my YouTube channel, which is N as in No, S as in Sam, I as in Indigo, NSI World, to check out past episodes and interviews. And the channel will be updated as well within the next couple of weeks too. So you'll be seeing new interviews and everything like that on the horizon. So now, introducing this gentleman I have the honor to talk with. This man has had I was talking with him before the show, just an impressive resume. He was a grad assistant for Syracuse, and he did his master's at Syracuse University. Then he was a football administrator at Notre Dame University, one of the great football programs, of course. And then he served as director of operations for the New England Patriots under Bill Belichick, and it was during their first Super Bowl championship in 2001. Then this gentleman was the senior associate commissioner for the Big East Conference for 11 years, and this is when the Big East Conference was at the height when it came to basketball as well as football. And also, he then became the senior director of college sports for Under Armour. Under Armour is one of the most revered athletic wear companies, and he served as senior director there, and now he's executive director of bowl season, overseeing operations and direction for the organization that will grow to 43 postseason college football games that started in 2020, 2021, and of course we're going to have in a couple of years the expansion of the college football playoff from 4 teams to 12 teams. It is my pleasure and honor to speak with Mr. Nick Carparelli on So Much to Talk About. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Nabaté. Thanks for having me on your show. Thanks for that introduction. You made me sound more impressive than I am, but I appreciate it.
No. You the work is there because your resume is a reflection of what you do for sure and everything like that. Wow, it's great to have you. And we were talking about beforehand, you have a podcast called Bowl Season Stories. Talk about how that ties in to the great work you're doing with Bowl Season.
Yeah, so we started it last year. You know, one of the many goals of our organization of Bowl Season is to tell all the great stories of bowl games and the experiences that people have had playing in bowl games, participating in bowl games, watching them growing up, turning on the TV over the holidays and finding a bowl game, not even planning on it, but you just find one and you get captivated by it. So we had 21 episodes last year. We have 20 episodes this year. We've released 18. We have 2 more to go. Just a unbelievable list of guests, from Tony Dorsett to Kirk Herbstreit, Pepper Johnson. Coach Belichick was a guest for me this year. Just talking about when his dad coached at Navy, and Roger Staubach was there, and they went to the Cotton Bowl. Just really cool stuff. So I encourage you, if people listening to your podcast here in Nabaté, if they're more interested in hearing about bowl season stories, to check out that podcast.
Wow, no, absolutely. I'm going to be checking it out like intensively, because I've always been a fan of bowl season since I was a kid, especially how the landscape of college football has changed. And what I like about bowl season, for me, I like the scout players. Like some teams that I haven't seen all year, like to scout players and check out, like, because usually when I see a player that does professional, technically sound things, I'm like, okay, this kid could be a mid-round pick, or a kid that I haven't got to see. It's great about bowl season, how you can see the talent, and everything coming up.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many great things about bowl season. One of them is, to your point, sometimes you have teams that maybe aren't in the spotlight all the time, especially some of those early bowl games before Christmas. I mean, think about Frank Gore Jr. at Southern Miss. You know the name from his dad. You may or may not have known he had a son. Southern Miss was not on TV a ton of times this year, but they had a window where they were playing in the Lending Tree Bowl. It was the only college football game on. He rushed for 329 yards, which was a bowl season record. In the 100 years of bowl games, no one's rushed for that many yards.
Wow.
And people know about him now, and people ask me a lot about, opt-outs and kids transferring, I'm probably stealing one of your questions, but
Mhm.
look, that's less than 10% of the roster. So over 90% are opting in. And if somebody opts out, that's just an opportunity for a younger player to step up and have his day to shine and maybe use the bowl game as a launching point for the following season. We saw, unfortunately, Marvin Harrison Jr. got injured last night in the Peach Bowl,
Yeah,
but no one really knew about him until last year's Rose Bowl when the starting receivers for Ohio State
that's right.
opted out.
Olave and Wilson. Yep.
Yes. So Marvin was pressed into duty maybe a game earlier. I think Ohio State people knew what they had, but he shined at the Rose Bowl, and they're like, "Oh, I can't wait to see this guy play next year." So, of the many things that bowl games provide to us, a little bit of glimpse of next year is one of the fun parts for me.
That's right. And another thing I wanted to mention too, like some of the kids, like this is their last time as student athletes. Like this is how they end, their memory and everything, especially it always good to go out on top, for sure. It makes it more competitive.
You think about that, like, we focus on the guys who go to the NFL. That's a small percentage, for most of these guys, the seniors, it's their last college football game they'll ever play in their life,
Mhm.
And I remember when I was young, Nabaté, you probably, well, you're still young, but when
I look young, but
but we lose perspective. We don't have perspective when we're young, right? So
yes.
there's no nostalgia yet. There's no appreciation for what you're doing, So, guys who opt out, I feel bad for them. They're probably getting bad advice. And 20 years from now, they're going to look back and say, God darn, I would do anything to play in one more college football game. Anything.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure nobody looks back and says, boy, I wish I did not play in that game.
Right.
I
Exactly.
wish I
Yeah.
played in one less. Nobody says that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. Wow, great. Here on So Much to Talk About with Mr. Nick Carparelli. He serves as the executive director of Bowl Season, overseeing operations and direction for Bowl Season, which the season is just growing with more and more bowl games. Of course, the expansion of the CFP, the college football playoffs, from 4 to 12, coming up in a couple of seasons. But Nick, I wanted to ask you about the December 31st games. My goodness. I mean, I've never seen two games back to back, two semifinal that had so much drama, so much technically sound play, so much competition, so much like ebbs and flows. I mean, what was your take? And you were in Phoenix actually seeing the Michigan TCU game, first that game. I mean, Michigan's defense top 5 in all categories in the entire FBS, which is Division 1A, used to be named Division 1A. Wow, TCU showed that they are for real and explosive, right?
For sure. I mean, first of all, they proved they belonged in the 14 playoff. There were some
That's
people who
right.
doubted that.
Right. After a close loss to Kansas State, they were undefeated,
Yeah.
had a close loss. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in second guessing. There are people today saying, well, this team shouldn't have been in, or Alabama should have been in, or teams make the playoff based on their performance in the regular season, right? And of course, some teams are going to have, good games and bad games after the fact. But I think all 4 teams in the playoff just played great. Obviously, there's some things I think Michigan would love to have a do-over on. For sure. They're going to be kicking themselves. But what a fun game to watch. I mean, I was there in person. People talk about, should playoff games be on campuses or should they be in bowl games? Campus environments are great. People tend to overreact to the moment. So during this season, what we saw some great games at LSU, at Tennessee, and the home game environment was awesome. So people were saying, well, we should have playoff games on campus. Well, instead of one fan base, dominating the building, you have this unique environment where, I took some time in Arizona to stand exactly behind a goalpost, up high, so I could see the Michigan fans to the right, the TCU fans to the left. You had purple, you had maize and blue. There was not a dull moment in the game. When one team was making a big play, that fan base rose up. And when the other team made a great play, the other fan base rose up. And it was almost like the fans were playing the game against each other at the same time as the teams playing on the field. And that's such a unique environment. And it's so perfect for championship level football. I don't know why anybody would want to have it on a campus where one fan base would be entirely excluded from that.
Exactly, because the FCS, which is formerly known as Division Double 2A, Division 1 AA, excuse me, where they have, games at home. But you're right, it needs to be on an even playing field and everything like that. That's so important. The reactions from the different schools and the back and forths, that's so important indeed, for sure.
Yeah, I have friends at the FCS level, and especially if they're growing a program and they're one of the lower seeds, and it's like, I'm tired of going to North Dakota and getting my butt kicked, and none of our fans are there because they don't want to go there. They just watch it on TV. It's the bowl game experience where both fans are equally represented, and you have that. It's just a different sound in the building. Mm-hmm. You don't get that anywhere else, not even in the NFL with the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl is so corporate. You'll have fans of both teams, but it's not, half the stands each. You go to that Fiesta Bowl yesterday. I mean, down the middle, to the right was Michigan, to the left was TCU, and they were battling each other.
Wow. And then it's just like the NCAA tournament. That's neutral as well. So, I feel football
site for championships is a tradition in college sports. It's not hasn't just been football, hasn't just been bowl games. You said it, NCAA tournament, even the early rounds. There's no campus games. Mm-hmm. You look at the College World Series, the 8 teams in the championship, they go to Omaha, the Women's World Series, the Soccer Cup. I mean, that's college sports, and I don't know why they would want to change that.
Here with Nick Carparelli, who is the executive director of Bowl Season here on So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles. So, Nick, the expansion from 4 to 12 teams. Very interesting. Now, question for you. Do you think there will be a sense of urgency for teams still, even though it's expanded to 12? For example, a 3-loss team can end up getting into that tournament, and everything. So, or is it a good situation when it comes to giving teams a chance, that had a bad start, that lost 2 games or lost 3 games in the beginning of the season, had a bad start, gives them a chance to pick it up? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the expansion is good from the standpoint for you just made that point. If under the current format, if a team loses, maybe even just 1 game early on the season, it might feel as if their chances to get in the playoff are done. Mm-hmm. So it gives teams a chance to improve over the course of the season and earn their way in and play in the playoff when they're at their best, versus judging them from the beginning of the year. So I think that's good. I hope people don't overreact and say, well, we need more, we need more, we need more. I think there's going to be a little bit of a problem with student athletes being willing to play 4 postseason games. Mm-hmm. If you're ranked 5 through 12 and you got to play those opening round games, you would have to play 4 games to win the whole thing. And, we're seeing opt-outs. I'm not so certain we're not going to see players opting out of the playoff, mm-hmm. if they kind of weigh their pros and cons of their personal situation. So I don't think it can get much bigger, but I love the fact that more teams are going to have a chance to win it all. Now, I don't know if some of those lower seeds are going to have much of a chance. We'll see. College football tends to be very heavy at the top. Yep. A lot of people are dissecting, okay, if the 12-team playoff was instituted this year with their rules, the top 4 seeds that get buys need to be the top 4 conference champions. So that would have been Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, and Kansas State. Mm-hmm. Been the top 4 seeds with a bye. Now we saw Clemson and Kansas State lose their bowl game. Now I'm not judging everything on that, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Alabama is basically, they were basically 3rd in their conference, the SEC, but still could have as good as any team in the country. So so you think really should it be the conference champions to be the top 4 seeds?
Well, I think the rationale is good. I think every conference is different. There's such a small set of non-conference games to mm-hmm. compare teams from conference to conference. Every mm-hmm. school's schedule is dominated by their conference. So you could have a really, really strong conference and the teams beat each other up, right? And it might look as if the champion or the second place team isn't as good as they are, but maybe that conference is just better than we think in a given year. So I think it's a good practice and a good system to have the conference champions earn their way in. And take those top seeds. You see it in the NFL. A couple of years ago, the NFC East, I think the Cowboys won it with a losing record, and
and this year the NFC South,
yeah,
with your guy Brady could be
under and they get preferential seating because they won their division. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Wow, no, interesting, and it's funny. Alabama, I just thought about it. Alabama could have been fourth in the conference overall because you had, of course, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee beat Alabama. Yes. So based on that, that's wow, that's deep. That's deep. And they still look so
and in the 14 playoff, I think in the 12-team playoff, I think all four of those teams would have been in.
That's right. For sure. No, I can't wait for 2024. I can't wait for that season. Oh my God. It's just one more year away. For sure. And I wanted to ask you about Jackson State and, the whole thing about Deion Sanders leaving Jackson State to go to Colorado and everything and the transfer portal and everything like that. Like, it's really turning the transfer portal to another level, But I wanted to ask you, because I know Jackson State had a bowl game and they lost. It was a close game. I was wondering how come Jackson State wasn't in, I don't know if you can answer this, wasn't in the FCS tournament since they were undefeated and ranked fifth, I believe, in the country.
Yeah, well, that's a decision that the historically Black colleges and universities made some time ago, that they weren't going to participate in those playoffs. That was their decision. I think, kind of like I alluded to earlier, they were tired of being a low seed and having to go to some cold destination and be overwhelmed, and that just wasn't a very good experience for them. So that's when the Celebration Bowl was created, and we found a loophole in the NCAA rules to allow 2 FCS teams to play in a bowl game. They're the only FCS team to do that, and it's been just as it's been titled. It's been kind of a celebration of those schools, and I went to that game last year, and it was like a big party. I'm telling you, the bands in the stands and the cheerleaders, and just such a cool environment. I think those schools really enjoy that experience for those student athletes better than an FCS playoff game, which I think says a lot to the value of bowl games. I really do.
True. And Deion Sanders, speaking of Deion Sanders, how the impact he's having on college football and with Colorado, do you think he can make an immediate impact with that institution? Because they were great in the 90s. We all remember the Rashawn Salams and Michael Westbrooks, of course, Cordell Stewart's, Bill McCartney, that era. But now, can Coach Prime be able to bring that back quickly?
For sure. He's gonna. It seems obviously he's gonna accumulate the talent to do it. But it's no disrespect to anybody. Coaching in a Power 5 conference at the FBS level is a little different than coaching at the FCS level. A lot of teams have talent, a lot of coaches that have been around for a long time, and they are sharp, X's and O's, Y's, schemes. I'm not astute enough to be able to assess Coach Prime's in-game coaching ability and adjustments and all that. But what we're gonna see now, where I think he had a little bit of an advantage at Jackson State, because even there, because of who he is, he probably accumulated better talent than almost everybody he played, But now you're going to see a little bit more level playing field. We'll see how his coaching abilities are next year for sure.
That's right, and I know he's a film savant, from his days, as a professional, and how he would lay his uniform straight, across, kind of from head to toe, how he would wear it, and then watch game film. It's just amazing. I can't wait to see what he does. I'm
gonna be fun to watch.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Buffaloes will be back, I'm sure. So, but no, I want to now ask you about, now programs to make money in the bowl games. That's good for programs too, like the mid-tier programs as well. To be for example, I saw that great game on Friday, which was amazing, the Mayo Bowl with Maryland and NC State. That was just so gritty, like a game like that, where teams really play hard, and how all the bowls help institutions be able to gain money for their programs and for their overall university.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, payouts that the bowl games make to the institutions, and that's really important. It pays for their expenses to go to the game, and then they profit as well. I think more important than that is the experience that the student athletes have, the chance to practice 2 more weeks than if you did not make a bowl game. A lot of younger guys get more reps during that time period. It's like a second spring practice.
Mhm.
To play another game, usually, very little competition between the bowl game that's on and other college football games. So you get a kind of an exclusive window so your program could really shine. And and these bowl games, they're 3, 4, 5 day experiences, where the student athletes are, getting to go to a place they don't normally go to, experience things that they wouldn't normally experience, and to do it with 100 of your closest friends. You talk about memories that last a lifetime, and every bowl game is different. You mentioned Charlotte. The kids get to get in. They go to the Charlotte Motor Speedway and get in a car and race around the track, and they have so much fun with that. The Pinstripe Bowl. They go to the 9/11 Memorial. They go to the top of the observation deck of the Freedom Tower. You bowl game by bowl game, they all kind of have whatever's unique to that area. Obviously the Florida Bowls, the kids go to the beach and they have some competitions amongst the teams. And we mentioned my podcast earlier. I talked to my guests who played in bowl games years ago about those experiences, and to a man, they say that of all the things they did in college, those bowl game experiences are the ones they remember the most.
Name, image, and likeness, NIL. What is your take on how it's the impact on the sport over the past? I think it started around 2021, so it's been almost 2 years. What is your take on NIL and how it's affected the landscape of college football?
Yeah, I think NIL is great. I think student athletes should have the ability to earn money based on who they are, just like everybody else in the world. I think it was handled very poorly. It's very inconsistent across the board. One state's interpretation, one school's interpretation is different than the others. There's certainly a lot of people out there who are abusing it, and going above and beyond what it should be. It should not be a pay for play. Student athletes are not employees. Some people think they should be. You got to be careful what you wish for. If you're an employee and you're 20 years old and you're maybe not quite as good as the coach thought you were when he recruited you, he could fire you, and now you're not getting your degree, so be careful what you wish for with that. But in terms of NIL, I think it needs to be regulated a little bit so the playing field is even. Still maximizing what the student athletes could earn, but making sure that every school has equal ability to do it, and is playing by the same rules, I think is important.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And especially and it gives some schools an advantage like that have no state tax. That's interesting. Like for sure.
Yeah, it brings out everything, the state tax or no state tax, private school versus public school. The how wealthy the donors are. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's college football has never been an even playing field, so why would we start here with trying to create it? But there are ways, there are rules that kind of keep things uniform. There's 85 scholarships, that's the limit. Used to be you can give as many scholarships as you wanted. You look at the old Junction Boys movie, Texas A&M. How many guys on scholarship did they have and back in the day? And you either made it or you didn't make it. And when your pool to pull from is bigger, you're bound to find some guys that can play that you didn't expect to.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. And now I want to talk about your experiences. I'm here with Nick Carparelli. He's the executive director of Bowl Season, overseeing operations direction for organization that's growing in postseason bowl games, over 43 now. And of course, the expansion of college football playoff starting in 2024. Can't wait for that for sure. But you've had such an illustrious career, Nick. And now, with the Patriots, once again, you were director of operations for the Patriots for the Super Bowl year 2001. How that was a really deep year, 9/11. And then the fact that they were playing the mighty Rams, and then you had the emergence also before in the beginning of the season of one Tom Brady, who's seen as probably the greatest football player to ever live and everything. And Drew Bledsoe, like his season ended and then Tom Brady took over. It just shows about opportunity. Talk about that year, how that helped you grow as a person and what you learned from Coach Belichick, the staff, and the players all around?
Yeah, that was such an amazing year. I mean, I mean, you could work in the NFL for 20 years and not have all the unique experiences that I had in that one year. Um, as you mentioned, the 9/11 year was the third game of the year. The NFL shut down that weekend, and the following weekend when games resumed, Joe Andruzzi took the field with two American flags, and his father and his brothers, who were New York Fire Department, who were on the scene, were on the field, and kind of hit home with us as an organization. And just an unbelievable. And to win the Super Bowl, I mean, it was when Coach Belichick hired me. I was the recruiting coordinator at Notre Dame. Coach Belichick's first year was 2000 with the Patriots. They were 5-11. So I remember he was the head coach of the Browns, got fired, was an assistant with the Patriots, assistant with the Jets.
Left the Jets that opportunity. He was supposed to take over the Jets.
Take over. Yeah, that was a little bit of a soap opera. And then he becomes head coach of the Patriots. He's 5-11, right? So you go back to that time. He is not, the greatest coach of all time, like we think of him now.
Yes.
So I take that job, and we have the year we have. We go to the Super Bowl. We're 14-point underdogs. I mean, it was just such a cool experience. I learned so much from him. As I have from all the places I've worked, all the people I've worked for. I think you kind of take a little bit from everybody, in your life that has been impactful, and it kind of creates who you are over time. I like to say that you're at any given point in time, you are the sum of all your experiences, right? And it keeps adding, and you theoretically you become better and better with each experience, even if it's a negative experience at the time. Once you get through, you say, okay, I learned something from that. But with him, it's just, the whole do your job thing. I mean, that is spot on. It's simple. There's meaning behind. There's another level to it, though. Do your job well. Don't try to do somebody else's job.
Right. Know your role.
Know your role, right? Just here's the task. Now, it works with him because he's very, very, very bright, very detail oriented. Your role. Right. If communication is a different kind of guy and say, well, do your job, and it's not clear what your job is, it's not going to work. But everybody who works for him, you know your job. Just go do it better than everybody else. Doesn't matter how small it is. And don't go messing with somebody else's job. Don't think you got some bright idea that's going to help somebody over on the other side. So I'm a big believer in that, because I've seen it work, and that's contributed to the culture. And it also led everybody, no matter how big your job seems compared to somebody else's, everybody in that organization has an unbelievable appreciation for everybody else's job, even if it seems small. Because if the smallest job is not done right, it can break down the effectiveness of some of the bigger jobs in the organization. So really cool experience.
Wow. And Tom Brady, what did you see in him, like in your dealings with him? This is his first year as a starter, his second year in the league.
Yeah, it was interesting, because when I took the job, like, nobody knew who he was. And, he did not have the most expensive car in the parking lot at that time. He was driving this yellow Jeep Wrangler, which was a little bit on the older side. And people kind of made fun of him because it looked more like a car that a girl would drive instead of an NFL football player. But I got to know him in a little different way, because he wasn't, who he was just yet. And I remember one evening after practice, might have been a Monday or Tuesday, where you just kind of, after a game where you have a walkthrough or you watch some film, but it's really the player's day off. So it's kind of low key. I was on the treadmill next to him, and we were just BSing a little bit. And I asked him, I said, Tom, do you ever think of what you'd be doing right now if you weren't playing in the NFL? And he thought about it for a second. He goes, no, never really thought about it. This is what I always knew I was going to do.
Wow, Nick, I want to say thank you so much for being on. So much to talk about. Such an honor to speak with you. And, great work that you're doing with bowl season. The bowl season is always a great time of the year and everything. And, one more question before you go. Which game, other than the two on December 31st, which game really stood out to you the most, especially with the competitiveness and such like a professional level of play?
Yeah, there were a bunch. The Cheez-It Bowl, Florida State, Oklahoma. was a great game. You talk about programs, using a bowl game not just as a reward for their successful season, but as a launching point for next year. I think Florida State now is going to go into next year with, there'll be some people saying they could be a playoff team, and they'll believe it as well.
That's right.
I think the Gator Bowl, Notre Dame, South Carolina was awesome for both programs. New head coach at Notre Dame, Shane Beamer, rebuilding the program. They were 6-6 last year, went to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, beat North Carolina, propelled them to this year 8-4. They beat 2 top 10 teams at the end of the year to get to the Gator Bowl. Played great. So those 2 games kind of stand out to me outside of the playoff games.
Such a pleasure to talk with you, Nick, and thanks again for being on so much stuff. I gotta have you back on, especially I would say before bowl season next year. Definitely gotta make that happen.
Count me in.
Absolutely. Wow. And thank you all for watching So Much to Talk About. My name is Nabaté Isles. Go on NSI World, my YouTube channel, and also check out my podcast, Where They At, in which I interview retired athletes, Hall of Fame caliber athletes, and some also legendary music artists as well. I'm a creative artist as well. All right. Take care, everybody. I'm Nabaté Isles. Have a wonderful night. God bless. Happy New Year. Bye-bye.